This one takes place on an island, not in an island, on an island off the coast in upstate New York. I feel like off the coast doesn't sound like the right word. And we meet our local police, sort of to commemorate her in sort of a weird reunion-y kind of dark way, but these are the things that happen. And our main character, who has Hi everybody, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today I'm going to talk about the last 4 books I read in January. So I did a part 1 video, which I will link for you guys in case you missed it. And all in, I would say I had a really good reading month. I read almost 12 books. I finished book number 12 on February 1st, but I'm going to talk about it today because I read most of it in January and it's fresh in my mind and I want to talk about it, and I'm in control of the situation here, so I can do whatever I want, right? But I had a really good reading month. I definitely gravitated towards some icy cold books. I was feeling that wintry vibe. I definitely was trying to read some of the books that I was actually talking about reading this winter, although I still haven't read Misery, but Don't Come For Me yet. And let's just dive into the books. They're so good. They're so good, you guys. So the last book I read, which is the first one I'm going to talk about today because why do things in order, is The Ice Princess by Camilla Lackberg. So this is the first in a series. I totally enjoyed this book. I definitely wasn't sure about some things that were happening. There were other things, like this is definitely so, let's back it up a minute. This is partial police investigation. We have a journalist who sort of partners with the police to investigate what is originally ruled a suicide but eventually deemed a murder. And I was totally hooked. I love always that partnership of sort of our amateur detective civilian partnering with the police. And this book plays very fair in that there are clues that are planted. You are following the breadcrumbs along with our characters, but then there are also things that are sort of, what's the right way of talking about this? Withheld from us, but in an intentional way that you know you're not getting all the breadcrumbs at the same time the characters are figuring stuff out, and I'll explain in half a minute. But there were things I figured out. I had some theories where I was like, that can't possibly be it, and then something was it, and then there was something I didn't see coming, but I very much enjoyed the book. So what's it about, you ask? So this book is set in Sweden, and our main character, Erica, winds up having to return home because her parents have passed away. And she has been there now for a month, and she then gets the news that one of her best friends from childhood, who she has lost touch with over the past 25 years because when they were younger, her friend and her family moved away, has been found dead in her bathtub. And Erica is a journalist, and she winds up trying to find out what happened to her friend. And then our police investigator that we follow is Patrick. And Patrick and Erica also knew each other when they were younger. This is a very small town, as you can imagine. And they haven't seen each other in a very long time, and they wind up working together. So I really enjoyed the characters in this. This is very much, I would say, in the vein of Ragnar Jonasson, in that this is very character driven. This is a very slow burn book. There's a lot of characters in this. We get that very small town vibe, so I almost feel like a little Cabot Cove-ish type of a thing, but everyone knows each other, a little Broadchurchy, and there's a lot of suspects, there's a lot of mystery, there's a lot of secrets from the past, there's a lot of secrets in the present, and we get a lot of, like I say, amateur detective investigation, and then we get police investigation. So what I was alluding to at the beginning is there are things that will happen where we are following the clues as our characters are finding the clues, but then there will be other moments where, I'll make one up, where it'll, like, they'll be investigating something and they will see a piece of paper on somebody's desk, and it'll be kind of to the effect of, she couldn't believe what she read, or he couldn't believe, you know, what was in the document, but they won't tell you what it is, but eventually you find out about it. So it's fair in the sense that you know they found something, but she doesn't totally tell you what it is at that moment, but eventually everything ties together and everything gets revealed. So I had a good time with this book. I wound up doing part of it on audiobook. So this is, I feel like it doesn't look like it's that big. This is nearly 400 pages, and yeah, 389, 390, 392, 393. How annoying am I right now? 393 pages. But I really enjoyed the audiobook in the sense that you know, like I said, this is set in Sweden, so you get the correct pronunciation on the town, on the names, and I liked that part of it, but it wasn't the best audiobook I've ever listened to. So this is a backlist book from 2010, I want to say. Yes. So translation copy was 2009. And I just don't think audiobooks were really all the rage back then the way they are today. And I feel like a lot of really well done audiobooks with like multiple narrators have really raised the bar on an audiobook. So this is a single male narrator, and he wasn't bad in any way, but you have so many different characters, and I didn't love all of his inflections with the different people's voices and how it changed character to character all the time. But I did, like I said, I really enjoyed it in the sense that you get the correct pronunciations, which I appreciate because there were a lot of towns and cities and places in here that I never would have figured out on my own. And also it was a book that I was so invested in that I wanted to keep with the story, but I eventually had to get up and do things in my life. So it allowed me to do things while I was listening. So I went back and forth between the two. But I would highly recommend it if you are looking for sort of a new series to get into, but it's not hardcore police. Again, super character driven and very deep into the lives of these characters. Like I very much cared about these characters. You really start to understand them. And the fact that the story continues, I also am very invested in some of the relationships and the people in here because you know that things will go on. But there's a lot of different threads in this. It's not solely about the mystery at the center of it, which I also liked. You have a lot of B and almost C stories that are going on in this book. So you get a lot of bang for your buck in this book, I would say. And I've just really been in a total series mood. But I think if you're looking to get into a new author who has an incredible backlist, or you already know Camilla Lackberg and you just haven't read the series yet, because she's a ton of books. I don't know, I'm sure she has standalones and a whole bunch of other things. I should know. But anyway, long story short, I totally enjoyed this book and I highly recommend it. The next book I have, so many of you guys had asked me to read it this year. It was 1000% my intent to read it this year, and I finally did. And this is a case of what took me so long, but also right book, right time, I think. And I finally read Shiver by Ali Reynolds. I loved this book, you guys. I can't even believe I didn't read it last year. I can't believe in my whole Alps isolated thriller sanatorium one by one Shiver situation, I left Shiver for last, but I'm almost glad I left Shiver for last because it was my favorite of those three. This, oh, there goes my voice too. That was fun. This book was so good. I compulsively read this book. I have pushed like, when Lindsay from Lindsay's Little Library told me she was reading it, I was like, this will break you out of a book slump. This is so incredible. You can't put it down. I 1000% cheated one day and maybe read a little bit while I was working because I needed to know what was going to happen. But I read this book in 3 days. This book is also not small, 390 pages. And it read so quickly, I couldn't get enough of this book. So this is everything I love. Past and present mystery, reunion, dark and messed up people, secrets in the past, secrets in the present, isolated trope, Agatha Christie style. It was amazing. So this follows a group of people in the French Alps having a reunion, very and then there were none style, which Ali Reynolds in multiple interviews says was a direct inspiration for this book. So in this book, we have a group of estranged friends who met 10 years ago, and they all trained at the same lodge for a winter season. They're all Olympic hopefuls. They're all snowboarders. And this is sort of like the winter that changes everything. And at the end of that winter, one of the women from the group went missing, never to be found, and has just been declared dead. So they are reuniting at the same place where they met all those years ago to sort of mourn, commemorate Saskia, who went missing. So they have not been in touch with each other. They all arrive, they get to the top of the mountain, they get to the lodge, like the little ski thing that brings you up and takes you back down again. Can you tell I don't ski? Has left them at the top. And they get to the lodge and they realize they are all alone and that the individual messages that each of them got was basically a ploy to get them there. And the person who apparently sent them didn't actually send the messages. And no sooner do they arrive that they realize that something really bad is up. and it just goes from there. And I loved it so much. So we wind up getting full past and present timeline. We get to see all of their relationships build over the course of the past, and then we get to see how fractured they are in the present. And I was so invested in this book, you guys. I can't say enough great things about it. I loved it so much. And this book does have a little bit of romance to it, which I wasn't aware of and normally would not be something I would gravitate to. It's just like I'm not like a big romance reader to begin with, but I don't gravitate towards like romantic suspense books. But it 1000% worked in this book, and I was loving every part of it. I just gobbled it up with a spoon. Couldn't get enough of it. So hugely, hugely, hugely recommend this book if you haven't read it. It's perfect for this time of year, but if you are not in a snowy place, I wouldn't hesitate to pick it up anyway. I can't wait to see what Allie Reynolds does next. I know she has a book coming out this summer. I think it's called The Swell in the US. I know it has a different name in the UK, and I'm just going to obsessively read it, and I am not going to wait to read it. I'm going to pre-order it and read it when I get it. It's definitely on my top list, but I loved it so much. I thought the writing was great. I thought the characters were great. I was down for the twists and turns, and I just love the complicated dynamics. So it's a co-ed group of friends. Two of the people are brother and sister. And you get all of those intricacies of sort of that dark, messed up female friendship. You see the manipulation, you see the competition between each other as they're all snowboarders, they're all sort of vying for the same thing. You see the jealousy and the envy amongst them because some of them are more talented, some of them are just better at their craft. There are sponsorships, there's so much money on the line, there's so much of their future that's on the line. And you really start to see sort of how they're all bonded together, but also how those kinds of very intense relationships can crack. And I just loved it. I thought it was smart. I thought it was well done. Stellar debut. Highly recommend. I can't talk about it enough, so I'm just gonna stop, but read it. Totally read it. The next book I have was a reread for me, and it's Death in the Family by Tessa Wiegert. So I wound up listening to the audiobook of this as my reread, and I have book number 2 in the series, and book number 3 is coming out this year. And I have an arc of it from NetGalley, which if you saw that video, this is going to feel like familiar information for you, but just in case. So this is another Agatha Christie style isolated mystery, which I love. And in this one, we have Detective Shana Merchant, who is our series character. And she's recently moved to upstate New York after being a police officer in New York City, and some stuff went down, and she's got some stuff in her past, which we get sprinkles of in this book. And her partner Tim wind up getting a call about a person who has gone missing on an island. And they're in upstate New York, did I say that already? In the Thousand Islands region of upstate New York. And one of the grandsons, who mind you is like a full-blown adult, I wanna say Jasper's like in his mid-late 20s, and he has gone missing. So he's not in his room, his fiance doesn't know where he is, but there is blood in the bed, which is a little bit sus, as you can imagine. So they wind up going out there to investigate a missing persons case, and wow, do they get so much more than they bargained for. So we get a big nor'easter that comes in, they wind up getting stranded on the island with this super rich, super messed up family who is sort of simultaneously not super helpful, but trying to be helpful, but keeping lots of secrets, and there's lots of mysteries and things that are going on here. So I have a few things to say about this book. One, I do not recommend the audiobook of this. I don't think it's well done. I think it takes away from how good the story is, and I feel like it could turn you off from the story because I just didn't enjoy it, and I don't think it did the story justice. So my advice would definitely be to read this one, and it's a short book, and it has, I just love the rich people behaving badly vibe, and you get plenty of that in here in spades, and then you also get some good police detective investigation element to it. So I will say it's always interesting on a reread where I land on things, and I feel like the first time around I totally loved this book, and I still totally loved the isolated vibes. I liked the mystery, I loved messed up family, and I enjoyed Shana. I feel like her past being woven into this, which is integral to her as a character, felt a little clunky to me, and I don't know if it was clunky because of the audiobook, and I kind of feel like it was, like things that I completely gobbled up in the book, I found more I don't want to say jarring in the audiobook, but I didn't feel like the transitions between, you know, her having a flashback or us going to the past tense were as smoothly done in the listening versus in the reading of it. So this is where like the audiobook versus the physical book experience for me can really determine how I feel about a book, like for better or for worse. But I definitely very much enjoy the series. I really enjoy Tessa Wiegert's writing. I'm very excited to keep reading in the series. I really enjoy Shayna as a character, and I'm excited to see where she goes next. And I don't know a ton about the next two books. I do think one of them, and I don't remember which one it is because I didn't want to read too much. One of them takes us to Vermont, and I don't know if it's book 2 or book 3, but I'll let you know when I get there because I fully plan to dive into Dead Wind, which is book number 2, next, because the whole point of doing the reread was to have it fresh in my mind so I can keep on going with the series, because you guys know I'm in a full-blown series mood. So I would say if you like the isolated thriller trope, it's not hardcore police detective, because you do get sort of the whole family isolated vibe to it all, but her and her partner Tim are doing the investigation together on the island with some limited resources. So it's not amateur detective, but they are certainly limited to what they can and can't do. And because of the time constraint of it all, this is like a 36-hour book, which I also love so much. Like I love that ticking time clock kind of a vibe to it all. So there you have it. Totally recommend it. Very much enjoyed it. And I will keep you guys posted on the rest of the series as I read it. And then the last book I have is The Pact by Sharon Bolton. So this is my first Sharon Bolton read, and I totally enjoyed this book. So this is definitely a dark and messed up friend group. Can you guys tell I was in like such a mode? So I read this after I read Shiver because, for one, I was totally feeling the past and present mystery and just sort of how something in the past can really rupture things in the present. So I was totally in that mindset. And then also what I'm trying to be better about, which we can all collectively laugh, but if I'm going to, I would loosely use the term pre-order for this. So this book came across my radar. Again, let's back it up a minute. This book came across my radar in December when I was doing some sort of deep dive research, I think about books that were coming out in 2022. And I was totally hooked on this, but then I realized this has already come out in the UK and it's coming out in the US later this year. So I purchased this from Book Depository. It had like a 4-week lead time on it for whatever reason, and I bought it before, like right before the holidays, but it wound up coming early and it showed up, and I was like, you know what? I need to read this now, because I made a deliberate choice to buy this book early so that I could have it, because I didn't want to wait till it came out in the US. So I'm gonna read it, and I did. And I really, really am happy that I did, because I totally enjoyed this book too. So this was another one where I read it relatively quickly. We have 6 friends, and it's a co-ed group of friends. We meet them their last year in high school, high school? Yes, it's high school, but I feel like I'm gonna get all the UK versus US terminology completely wrong, because it's the night before they're getting sort of their final results, which determines like where they're going to school, or confirmation of where they're going to school, which is totally different than like an SAT situation in the US. But basically they are 6 talented up-and-coming superstars that are really good friends, and it's the night before, you know, their future, sort of their last hurrah. And of course they make a really dumb decision that night that changes everything. And in a very if we were villains kind of a way, one of the people in the group sort of volunteers as tribute to take the blame for what happened, to protect everyone else, with the caveat of, you know, when I get out, I'm going to basically cash in on my favors. I did this for you guys, and somewhere down the road, you're gonna do something for me. And everyone's like, got it, no problem. So we fast forward 20 years, and Megan is out of prison, and she returns, and she's here to cash in. And everyone's sort of like, what? And everything comes out, past, present, all the feelings, all the complicated relationships. We start to watch this friend group as they try to stand firm and stand together and figure out what's going on with Megan. And we get sort of all the messed upness that existed back when they were younger, and all the messed upness that exists in their current state and where they are today. And I really, really enjoyed this book. So this definitely is going to be, like I said, the dark and messed up people doing dark and messed up things. This book will not be for everyone, but that's totally fine. And I say it just in the way that I know not everybody likes an unlikable character. I love me just a whole book chock full of unlikable characters. So sort of in a very hunting party kind of a way. And I was totally invested. So there were definitely things that took me by surprise. I didn't see where certain things were going. Lots of good twists, lots of good turns. Like it definitely, like I was hooked to the page. It had me like wanting more. There was one thing that happened in the book that I'm not like 1000% on board with a certain thread that happened, but that's totally fine. Things are not always going to be like perfectly as I want it, but there's something that just felt a little bit off to me. But maybe that's just me. I have not at this point done a deep dive on other people's reviews of this book, to be honest, but I'm curious to see if anyone else mentioned something that I just didn't totally love. But it definitely is about class, it's about greed, it's about entitlement, and it's very much like the lengths you will go to protect yourself and protect your family. And I just thought it was really well done. So I initially, when I read the book, where I was like, okay, something happens in the past and then we fast forward 20 years, I kind of expected it to be more like a Shiver, and I think it's because I had literally just read this, where I thought it would be alternating chapters. But in this, we actually see a decent amount of them in the past timeline, and then we jump forward. So it was just done in a different way, which doesn't make it better or worse, but I went into it thinking it was gonna be an alternating chapter kind of a thing, and it wasn't, which doesn't change anything about anything other than to tell you a little bit about the structure of the book. But I really enjoyed her writing. I also feel like this will come to no surprise to anyone watching. Not the only Sharon Bolton book on my shelf, yet I haven't read them. So I have Daisy and Chains, which I've talked about multiple times and never picked it up. And then I have, I want to say The Craftsman is what it's called, which is supposed to be pretty dark and messed up, which is great. And I believe she does, I feel like I'm going to talk out of turn here. She definitely has standalone books. I don't know if she has a series, but she definitely has a bunch of standalones. This is a standalone, and I loved it. So if you guys are in like a dark and messed up mind frame, this is a great one to go for. So again, it's out in the UK now. It'll be out in the US, I want to say this summer. I'll leave it down below. I'll double check. But I really enjoyed it. I'm really glad I finally read me some Sharon Bolton, and this definitely will not be my last. This is just sort of flipped the switch on me being even more intrigued by her books, and I'm really glad that I have a few of them already that I can turn to. So there you have it. So that's gonna do it to round out my month of reading for January. And like I said, it was just a great month, and I'm so happy about it. I'm always happy when I read a good book, right? I mean, who isn't? But let me know how your reading month went. If you had a fave, if you had like something that was collecting dust on the shelf a la Shiver and you pulled it off and you loved it to pieces, let me know. Let me know anything you want, let me know down below. But I hope everyone's doing great. Thank you again, as always, for spending part of your day with me. I do so much appreciate it. And I will see you guys really soon in another video. Take care, everybody. Bye.